And we're in the garden this morning. Good morning again, Dabney.
Morning. I'll tell you, this beautiful weather, and you know, I'm not used to having weekends off, so what do? There's so many things that we can do, but
Yes.
gardening is always #1 priority, of course.
always is number one priority. I mean, we're getting to the time of year, Dabney, where we have fairly decent weather. We've had a good amount of rainfall. How are the gardens basically faring?
I think everything's doing well. The vegetable gardens are not really jumping because of the cooler weather, but they're looking great. The big thing I noticed out in the neighborhood is the lawns. We're now getting in the second, third crop of weeds starting to germinate because of the cooler weather. So we're still having chickweed, we're still having wild violets. Now the black medic is starting to come up. That's like a little clover type thing. So the point is, if you're having weeds in your lawn, great time of year to be spot spraying. You know, we don't want to do a weed and feed. We don't want to put weed killer everywhere, but just mix some up in a pump sprayer. And go out and just spot spray where you see the weed to keep them from competing with your grass. The other thing that we might want to be on the lookout for too, now that the wheat fields are starting to mature, we're going to start harvesting wheat. The thrip that attacks tomatoes come out of those fields when they start harvesting. So if you haven't put your garlic around your plants to help repel the insects, you may want to pick up something natural to treat with, canola oil, pyrethrin or something. Just periodically spray your tomatoes just to keep the thrip off of them.
Yeah, I have about a dozen tomatoes, so I don't want them to go from those bugs. Yikes. We have a caller here, Vicki in Virginia Beach. Good morning. What's your question for Dabney?
Winter, my poor gardenia bush took a major hit, and it's been in my yard for 20 years. I noticed that the leaves are very sparse, so I'm thinking this year I'm not going to get too many flowers off of it. So should I cut it back to the bare bones, or should I let it go a year and then cut it back next year?
No, now's the time to go ahead and prune, and we could have done it a couple weeks ago, and we can still do it. And I would cut it back a third, maybe even a half. You know, you have to look at just how thin it is, and everybody's gardenia is a little different. I had a couple that I cut back a third. I had a couple I only cut back about 4 or 6 inches because they were in a protected area and didn't get quite as much damage. But the point is, prune it back a third to half, fertilize it, and you'll still get blooms. The key is you're not going to have blooms the middle of June or end of June. It's going to probably be in August, but that doesn't hurt the plant. They bloom on new growth, so getting a lot of new growth just means you're going to get that many more blooms.
Okay, and we have another caller here, Dabney. Peggy in Chesapeake. Good morning. What's your question for Dabney?
I want to know what is, my leaves are turning, wilting on my apricot tree.
I would suspect if you're having wilting leaves, you may have an insect that we call a borer, particularly if you have an older tree. If it's a newer tree, then make sure it's not staying too wet. But unfortunately, on borers in our fruit trees, there's limited number of products we can use. I know Bayer has one out that is registered for fruit trees that's systemic, that can be put on the soil, go up into the plant, protect it. The one thing about borers, generally it takes 2 to 3 years attacks before they kill your tree. So even though you have some damage, if this is the first year you've seen it, we possibly could still treat the tree and protect it and so the tree could survive.
All right, great. We have time for one more caller, Dabney. Tanya in Hampton. Good morning. What's your question?
My question is, what is the best thing to plant for mosquitoes?
Excuse me. One of the better plants to use is the citrosa, which is a synodrenium. It's called citrosa citronella. That works extremely well. But keep in mind now, when you plant these, the oil that goes into the air doesn't do a real large area. So if you're trying to do around your patio, put 2 or 3 plants and keep them fairly close to where you're going to be. You hear a lot about lemongrass. My experience with lemongrass is great to grow, to take the leaves, crush them, and rub on your skin to repel the mosquitoes. But as far as just that growing and repelling, I haven't had a lot of success with it. I think the citronella plant does a little bit better.
It's pretty easy to grow that citronella plant?
Oh, easy, yeah, very, very easy.
Okay.
And it's right pretty plant because it gets a little lavender color bloom on it.
Nice.
And actually, you know, you can get 1 or 2 because they're a little pricey to get 1 or 2 of them. Then as they grow, cut the branches off, root your own, and you can get multiple plants. And keep in mind, because it is in the geranium family, we can overwinter it in the garage in a pot, or actually, believe it or not, geranium you can pull out the end of the season, dry them, hang them upside down, and then plant them back next spring, and you get
Wow.
plants all over again.
Wow, no kidding. Who would have known? Well, Dabney would have known. And we'll have more on our website at wavy.com. If you missed any of the segments with Dabney, you can check that out. We'll have another check of weather coming up after the break.
Great Memorial Day.
Yes.